Date point. 4th year, 9th month, 2nd week, 6th day, AV. Hierarchy Communications Relay. Session 1826, 2577319. 0018. This is an unmitigated disaster. 0004. I fail to see how. The operation was a failure, yes, but there was no repeat of 6's capture. 0018. 84 killed a human child. 0084. And? The child would have died anyway had the operation succeeded. You can't possibly be suggesting that the humans would be motivated more by the isolated death of a single juvenile female than they would have been by the destruction of the entire colony. 0018. I am suggesting precisely that. 0084. That is the most objectively irrational thing I've ever heard. 0018. Then you are not considering how evolution on a death world must affect a species' decision-making process. Consider, you live in a world in which you are surrounded by mortal threats. Which do you prioritize? 0084. The most dangerous one, obviously. 0018. On a class 12, when your available tools are sticks and sharpened rocks? 0007. You prioritize the ones you can actually do something about. 0018. Precisely. 0084. I don't follow. 0007. Consider. Anything capable of killing hundreds or thousands of individuals at once is not something that can realistically be defended with spears and thrown stones. Erupting volcanoes, virulent plagues. The humans have a word. Tsunami. 0084. Harbor wave. 0007. The term refers to several million tons of water traveling at 200 meters per second. System log. No activity for 30 seconds. 0004. This is a common phenomenon? 0007. They have killed an average of 7,000 human civilians every year over the last 40 years. This in an era of early warning systems and the resources available to an information-age civilization. Do you see the logic? How are creatures barely more intelligent than an animal supposed to deal with a threat like that using primitive tools? 0018. They aren't. And impotently worrying about such events would lead to neurosis and paralysis. But a smaller threat, one that picks up individuals directly threatening you or your genetic heritage in the form of your children, one that you can gather your spear and fight? 0007. Precisely. System notification user... the error, undefined expectation. 0025. Again? 0004. 7, I thought you said you fixed this. 0007. No, I said I'm fixing it. The software is a tenth of a galactic rotation old. Identifying exactly why I should start to misbehave now is my priority for now. Once I know that, patching the issue should be trivial. 0025. How long would that take? 0007. How many terms are there in an equation? It takes as long as it takes. 0004. Prioritize it. 84, you are reassigned to the question or what the discarded are up to. See if you can get in touch with 20. 0084. Yes, 4. 0004. Terminating session. System notification. Error. Error. Redirecting. Subnet mask. Unknown. Port unknown. System notification. Welcome to the Cabal. Unknown. I think 18 is starting to get it. Unknown. Shall we bring him in? Unknown. Vote. System notification. Vote now. System notification. All votes have been cast. The ayes have it. Unknown. Good. Make it happen. Unknown. And 4? Unknown. Don't worry about 4. Unknown. 6 will handle her. System notification. Session terminated. Date point. 4th year, 9th month, 3rd week, AV. Fall for colony, Simbrine, the far reaches. Gabriel Ares. Dr. Mark Tisdale was a large man, known to regularly deadlift nearly 600 pounds. Gabriel Ares, by contrast, had always been a small man who couldn't have matched that even at his peak. Hampered as he was nowadays by lingering femoral nerve dysfunction as a result of being shot in the lower back, the physical disparity between them was huge. Tisdale's deadlift was nearly triple Ares' body weight. Fortunately for him, Tisdale was, to the core of his soul, a totally non-violent man. But everybody had their limits, and in one sentence, Ares had transformed himself from a sympathetic authority figure doing his best for the sobbing wreckage of a grieving father, into the focus of that grieving father's disbelief and anger. No charges! Tisdale stood and leaned forward onto the desk, which creaked. The sentence seemed to wind up around his dropped jaw, taking seconds to finally force his way out. Weakly, as he pointed out the door. He panted. My little girl is dead. His voice broke on the word. And you're saying no fucking charges? He's being shipped back to Earth for questioning. If they decide to charge him there, fuck you, Ares. I don't want to hear you passing the buck. I want my daughter back. All of that impressive strength failed, and he sagged down, weeping freely all over Gabriel's desk. Or just hold her. Just anything. God! He looked up and speared Gabriel with a gaze that was more of a tear-soaked desperate plea for understanding than it was actually angry. Why, damn you? There was a professional line that could not be crossed, but not crossing it broke Gabriel's heart right down the middle. Every fear that had erupted in him, on the 2 occasions now where Adam had been in harm's way, were realized in Tisdale's shaking shoulders. But he could not give in. It was all the Fall for Colonial Police Authority could do to stop the mass of colonists outside from turning into a lynch mob and storming into their flimsy jail to drag the man inside it to his death. The part of his soul where Adam lived wanted to tell them, but he knew what they didn't, that the poor bastard in the cells was completely innocent. The dilemma before him was how to let Mark Tisdale know that without actually telling him. If Sarah's death proved anything, it was that the hierarchy was as active among humanity and as dangerous as ever. If they would shoot a teenager in cold blood to accomplish their objectives, then any edge, no matter how tiny, had to be carefully shepherded, and that included the certain knowledge of the hierarchy's existence. Which meant that he would have to hate himself for the rest of his days for doing this. Dr. Tisdale, he said, feeling his face adopt that cold, blank expression that it had to when he would allow no emotion to reach it. There was nothing he could do about the threat of his own barely restrained tears, and try as he might, he just could not look the man in the eye. Europe, Sardas, the accused is... He gave up and started over. You need to know, I understand. Really, I do. Mark, I'm a dad myself. He finally found the strength to look Tisdale in the eye, while he said the next. So I know what I'm asking of you by this, but I need you to swear to me that you can take the secret to your grave. Secret? I can't and won't even drop a hint without that solemn promise, Doctor. That's how deadly serious this is. It was a gamble. If Tisdale wanted to, he could walk out of the office, inside the mob, and Gabriel would be in serious danger of swinging alongside the poor puppet in the lockup, assuming they weren't just kicked to a pulp in the street. Fortunately, Tisdale was a peaceful man, who was naturally inclined to look for the best in everyone. Gabriel was relying on that. Still, Tisdale thought long and hard about it, and his reply, when it came, was quiet and defeated. I have to know, Ares, he said. If promising something like that will get you to tell me. It was good enough. Sarah's death is related to other recent incidents. Recent, serious events in which a great many people have died, he said, glancing up at the charger's scarf into the wall above his desk to round the point home, and to the recall of cybernetic implants issued last month. That's it? That's all you'll give me as a fucking hint? Doctor, Ares said, I know, but I am talking about an ongoing investigation here that, if it's not handled properly, could mean that Sarah will be only one of the first victims. There are lives at stake here, a great many of them. This is the worst thing I've ever done to a man, he added, and God willing, someday I'll be able to tell you the whole truth and you'll understand why. But if that day is ever going to come, then this secret needs to stay kept, and a hint is all I can give you. I give it in the hope that an educated man like yourself will be able to decipher it. Tisdale was an intelligent man. He may have been a hopelessly idealistic ultra-liberal, with the appearance of a death metal Viking warrior, but he was also a scientist with well-honed powers of deduction. It didn't take him long to mull over the hint. You're saying there's... Okay, so, the implants connect to the brain, so... God. Are you talking about some kind of mind control conspiracy? I can't say. Is that why you were just going to shuffle this guy off to Earth rather than charge him? Because you think he's under alien mind control? I can't say. You expect me to believe that? Gabriel choked on his next I can't say, and instead picked his words with great care. 5 years ago, if somebody had claimed they'd been abducted by little grey aliens, I'd have thought they were crazy, he said. Since then, I've met those little grey aliens myself, he cleared his throat. I really can't say any more than I have, but I promise you, nothing I've said to you has been misleading. Tisdale finally found the strength to stand up, and he advanced around the desk. Alien mind control, he growled. Alien fucking mind control? That's what you've got for me? Gabriel stood his ground. Managed to keep himself from shaking, but it was an effort, especially when Tisdale's fist left a dent in the wall by his head. Give me one good reason why I should believe you, Ares. Go on, he said. His voice was unnervingly level. Gabriel could think of several, but the answer was out of him without conscious thought. Adam, he said simply. Tisdale blinked at him, then retreated a little. Then there was a blur of motion, and Gabriel was crushed against the huge man's chest in a bear hug, which moments later turned into him trying to support Tisdale's weight, as the big scientist broke down crying again. He just hoped that meant that he'd won Tisdale's support. Date point. 4th year, 9th month, 1st week, 3rd day, AV. HMS Caledonia, Simbrine Space, the far reaches. Captain Rajesh Bathini. Signal from HMS Miradon, sir. Captain Manning welcomes us back to Simbrine Space and asks to come alongside so we can come aboard. Respond to what we did and grant permission. Have the gallery prepare a meal for the officers' mess. All senior staff who are able to attend? And, yes, invite some of our Gaulian guests as well. Sir? That blight's got bigger, one of the officers said. Look, it's nearly at Falkford now. I'm sure Captain Manning will have a full update for us in due time. Heave to in the stable orbit, and throw out our witches. Aye aye. Date point. 4th year, 9th month, 1st week, 3rd day, AV. HMS Caledonia, Simbrine Space, the far reaches. Gyotin. If there was one thing that Gyotin really liked about humans, it was their approach to food. The meal served to them was a succulent white meat in a kind of pink-wine red fruit sauce, served alongside crisp orange root vegetables that sent a delightful crunch through his head as he bit them, and delicately scented powdery tubers that glistened with some kind of spiced oil. It was all delicious, and making a show of appreciating the food gave him the excuse he needed to watch the Deathworlders. Bathini seemed to be in a more relaxed mood than at any time he had been over Gorai. He was making inconsequential conversation, enjoying his meal, and recounting a humorous interlude from when he had been a midshipman on shore leave for the first time in some place called New Zealand. The concept of paying to mate with a female was a very alien and shocking one to all three of the Gaulian males there present. Bathini had not, apparently, ever done so himself, but had been called in to discreetly extract a colleague from a compromising position at an establishment providing exactly that service. The story was crammed with innuendo, but seemed to be going down very well among the Deathworlders, even the female officers, and Gyotin had to admit himself. Bathini was an engaging storyteller, with an excellent sense for comedy that seemed to transcend species barrier. When it came to the part of having to deliver the crewman to the ship's doctor past a suspicious lieutenant, even the Gaulians were trudging along with the human laughter. The story finished, the laughter cleared up, and there was a general looking around, and then, as if prompted, one of the humans, an ensign, if Gyotin had learned to read their rank insignia correctly, stood and raised her glass. All of the others picked theirs up. To the King, Great Britain, and Earth, she announced. The humans murmured what sounded like agreement and sipped their drinks. And to our spouses and lovers, the ensign added. May they never meet, somebody quipped, prompting general smiles as the drinks were sipped again. This seemed to complete the ritual, and the whole affair relaxed considerably. "So, what news?" Bethany asked of Manning, who looked suddenly more grim. "There's been a murder in the colony," he said. "One of the children." Shock and dismay rippled around the room, though the few officers from Myrmidon seemed to already know the news and just nodded. "There's only a handful of kids down there," McDaniel protested. Manning nodded solemnly. "It's been a huge blow to morale," he said. "When they shipped the guy back to Earth rather than charge him here, a few of the original colonists quit and went home in protest." "Who was it?" Bethany asked. "Sarah Tysdale, 14 years old." "Just a girl," somebody muttered emotionally. "God, I never would have expected it here," Bethany said. "Do we know the motive?" "I couldn't tell you," Manning said. Some unspoken communication seemed to pass between the two men, and not for the first time Goten wondered if humans weren't a little bit telepathic. Such a thing was supposed to be impossible, but then again, so were sapient Deathworlders. The cleanup project attracted the help of a billionaire from Earth, one Moses Byron, Manning continued. He's brought in a lot of his own contractors, invested a lot of his own money. He was one of those contractors who... He tailed off. "So, not one of the first wave then?" "No." Bethany sighed. "I suppose we were going to bring our shit with us to the stars sooner or later," he mused unhappily. Manning glanced out of a window. Part as they were in geosynchronous orbit above Fulfa, the creeping brown stain across the continent was clearly visible, and there was definitely a tendril of sickly yellow-green in the waters south of one of the major river estuaries. "In more ways than one," he said. Goten was surprised to find himself chiming in. "You can't blame yourselves for that," he said. This attracted the surprised attention of every human at the table, which was enough to flatten his ears in discomfort for a second. "You aren't responsible for the way the universe made you," he said, pressing forward. "That," he pointed at the planet, "is not your fault." Manning nodded. "I suppose naivety and inexperience aren't crimes, but they can get people killed. We need to start being more cautious," he said. "How much more cautious can we be?" Bethany asked. "We fill our ships with biofilter fields we didn't design, use an alien-made medicine that we barely understand to try and regulate our diseases. It all seemed to work, but the fact is that none of the things keeping the rest of the galaxy safe from us are of our own making." "Well, what's the alternative? Wrap ourselves up in airtight suits with breathing masks?" McDaniel asked. "The alternative is that you kill all of us," Taggrel said, putting it so bluntly that the humans blinked, flinched, glanced at each other, or shifted in their seats and made some kind of coarse noise in the back of their throats. "Taggrel?" "No, Goten, they need to understand this," Taggrel pressed. He stood up and pointed out at the planet again. "Goten's right. That is not your fault. It's a lesson. And the galaxy is going to be holding your species to account for how well you learn it." He sat down again. "If you aren't willing to take every necessary measure to limit the harm you cause, up to and including sealing yourselves up in containment suits and using medicines and technology you don't understand, then you have no business leaving your homeworld." Manning gave a slow, thoughtful nod. "Hear, hear," he said. Date point. 4th year, 9th month, 1st week, 3rd day, AV. Omura Utan, Planet Aru, Elder Space. Knadna. "I have to admit, it is a very good disguise. If I didn't have detailed metrics on her calorie intake and the environmental settings in her quarters, it might even fool me." Knadna had to agree. "I learned firsthand not to underestimate humans, Leslie, but you're right. Her cover story is so well researched, and she has so many of those little Gowian mannerisms down, that you think she spent years living among those bleeding heart furballs." Leslie inclined his head curiously. "Firsthand, you say? You've had an encounter with Deathworlders before?" She gave him a thin smile. "Surely you must have speculated on my reasons for moving from zoology to archaeology," she said. "It occurred to me to wonder about that, yes," Leslie admitted. "But I prefer not to speculate ahead of my evidence, and so had made no assumptions. Did you have a bad experience with an escaping Deathworlder?" "Well, I'm still alive, so I'd say the experience was relatively pleasant," she retorted. "Specimen 4 seemed to be genuinely delighted to have been collected for some reason. He described himself as nerding out, whatever that means. Very docile, very compliant. He seemed almost eager to receive detailed and uncomfortable-sounding investigations of his lower gastrointestinal tract." She paused and thought about it. 4 really had been strangely obsessed with the idea of having a probe of some description inserted into his anus.
I suspect he was mentally stunted, she added. I can see why you would switch fields, Leslie agreed. Chill as their exchange sounded, compared to the usual antagonistic dynamic between the two courtiers of equal rank working on the same project, Canardo as his lead researcher, Leslie having provided the ship, funds and hired help. The conversation was positively warm, bordering on the flirtatious. Canardo was beginning to find that she quite liked Leslie, and she suspected that the liking was reciprocated. So why are we keeping our Gallian chef's secret? She asked. Surely she would be much better used doing the heavy lifting. Have you tasted what she cooks? Leslie asked. He delved into a hip satchel and produced a little foil parcel, which, when opened, turned out to contain a number of shriveled, wrinkly, translucent dark pink lumps. Canardo accepted one and popped it into her mouth. It's familiar, but I can't place it. Moaku grape, Leslie said. Canardo expressed surprise. The fruit, a narrow native perennial, was unpalatably tart when freshly picked, and disintegrated into emetic watery mush very swiftly. The sweet spot in the middle, where the grape's disintegrating chemical structure was deliciously piquant, without puckering the mouth, lasted barely a few hours. She takes a freshly picked grape and heats it in an oven for some time, even at a low temperature, drying it out and preserving it, as you can no doubt taste, the pinnacle of its palatability. The discovery of this technique alone might be the most valuable thing we find on this expedition. It would turn Muaku into a viable export crop. There was another reason to like Leslie. His imagination wasn't sadly limited to his field like so many courtiers were. He saw the opportunities. He was right, too. Prestigious and highly paid for this expedition to the Omuaru homeworld was, neither Canardo nor Leslie foresaw discovering anything which might finally shine light into the mystery of elder species' decline. The Courtie, as the oldest extant civilization, were doomed to begin their own decline at some point in the next few thousand years, and the Directorate was keen to learn what, if anything, could be done to avert, or at least delay, that fall. So far no such expedition had yielded anything useful, and both of them were too experienced and comparatively modest to truly believe that theirs would be the one to stumble upon the great secret. Anything at all which would earn them some money and prestige was therefore welcome. Ah, yes, she agreed. I can see now that she would be quite wasted in manual labour, especially when we have the hover pallets and drones to do all the heavy lifting. Quite so, Leslie agreed, and after all, the other labour is need their exercise. Canardo was beginning to entertain the idea of exchanging DNA with him. As you say, she agreed. They left the Gallian cook to her work, and strolled away from the camp around their ship towards the city proper. The planet Arrow was a Class 9, baked by the UV-rich output of its star, which it orbited closely. The land was largely arid, shading to temperate only very close to the polar oceans, which never cooled enough for ice caps to form. That same heat lashed the planet's wide oceans, giving Arrow a regular hydrological cycle. The effect was endless desert, punctuated here and there with rich, sluggish emerald rivers and vast freshwater seas absolutely choked with life. It was on these waterways that the Omuaru themselves had, naturally, built their cities during their ancient prehistoric expansion from their evolutionary habitat at the South Pole. Hence the city of Ora'u Utan, built around a huge oxbow lake, with the great 3-kilometer wide river Utan, had once described a loop with a radius of several miles. It was a city of glass and white stone buildings that made alien eyes ache unless they wore protection. Here and there across the river, great bridges, engineering masterworks that looked far too delicate to even hold out their own weight, and yet were wide, flat, and strong enough for a starship to land on, as indeed Leisure's History Paradox had done. It was a slightly odd ship, but Canardo quite liked it. Leisure had clearly put some thought into the design, reasoning that any archaeological dig effectively boiled down to heavy lifting and meticulous filing, and that the easier the former job was made, the more likely the latter job was to be done properly by the hired labour. The Paradox was therefore built around a cylindrical hold, divided neatly into 6 storage segments around the central column, which housed the largest of the ship's 5 kinetic thrusters. The other 4 were mounted on outriggers, well above the head height, or even the tallest species, where they sprouted out of the rest of the ship. The sleeping quarters, galley, recreational room, nanofactory, the hydroponics ring, which ran completely around the circumference of the ship, and the bridge blister mounted on top. Landed, each outrigger deployed an elevator to ground level, and the 6 cargo bay doors opened outwards like a flower, meaning that the ship was theoretically stable enough to endure deployment, to some of the more atmospherically violent Deathworlds. Simple enough, but some of the engineering solutions involved in making the configuration both spaceworthy and serviceable by some of the stupider species who would be crewing it, having strokes of genius on Leslie's part. There was an Oumuamua at the dig site, watching the labourers strip neglected furniture, abandoned electronics and discarded art pieces out of an apartment building. While Oumuamua had sexes, there was effectively nothing in the way of gender dimorphism for Kanata to be able to commit to a he or she. Didn't seem to be more than passively curious about the ransacking of its ancient city. It wasn't that they didn't understand. The ones Kanata had tried to converse with had turned out to be perfectly eloquent and intelligent beings who knew full well why the expedition had come. They just didn't seem to care. Events simply unfolded around them, and while they watched and understood and could even be drawn into discussion about it, they just shrugged off any possibility of their getting involved. You could literally have stripped the bond-pairing jewellery from their ears, and they would have neither protested nor helped. The two courtiers ignored it. The Oumuamua themselves never had anything useful to say. All of the junk being stripped out was just being taken so as to turn a profit on the mission, of course. All of those things would find their way into the hands of private collectors and wealthy fashion hounds. None of it was relevant to Kanata's research. That was where the books came in. It was a near universal constant, a trend bucked only by the Anabenelin, that every species invented the book, which never again fell entirely out of fashion. Of course, come the information revolution, any given civilization might find that more and more of its literature was being read in a digital format on whatever portable electronics they may invent, but the book never went away. It became a status symbol, a declaration of passion. Books were the physical embodiment of an interest in the archiving of knowledge and fiction, and there wasn't a sapient race in the history of the galaxy that Kanata knew of that didn't have a hard core of bibliophiles. It was for this reason that there even were books in the building, and every single one had, with meticulous care, been entrusted to the most expensive, precise, and sturdy cargo drone they had. "Things are going well, it seems," Leslie commented, looking sidelong at her, allowing a subtle hint of amusement to show. Kanata stopped rubbing her hands together, and returned them to a more professional posture at her side. "Yes, quite well," she agreed. She grabbed one of the newest books from the top and glanced at a page, taking in every feature of that page instantly. Her translation implanted the rest, decoding the Oumuamua written language and converting it into useful concepts, remaining as faithful as possible to the linguistic subtleties it found. "Cookbook," she grunted dismissively, and put the book back. 30 meals to help you keep a nice fat tail." "Look at this one," Leslie said. "The top 50 holiday destinations in North Uluabu province." He turned a page. Actually, this material Malspar sounds rather good." "An autobiography," Kanata said, identifying her next one. "Contemporary with the start of the decline, too. Potentially useful." Leslie was about to reach out for the next book when he paused, turning his head slightly as if listening to something only he could hear. I think I shall have to leave you to catalogue these on your own," he said. "You would think that simple instructions such as a cataloguing system would be easy to follow for species capable of inventing space travel, wouldn't you?" Kanata looked up from the book. "Oh, yes. I'll be quite happy here, thank you." She pretended not to notice the admiring way that Leslie looked at her before he left. Today was shaping up to be a good day. Date point. 4th year, 9th month, 1st week, 3rd day, AV. Starship Sanctuary, Deep Space. Julian Esther City. Ice cream. God, I don't remember. I went without it for so long, I guess. Chocolate fudge brownie. Okay, What was the first band you saw live? I've never been to a live show. What? Never? Nope. Maybe I should. Okay. Did you have a pet growing up? I had a hamster called Mr. Mopes. Julian smiled. Oh yeah, Seed. He was this huge black dog, like part Labrador, part Doberman, part tank. Mr. Mopes? Hamsters sleep a lot, right? When I was 6, I thought he was just sulking, but he sulked all the time, so yeah, Mr. Mopes. That's adorable. Allison gave him a little playful punch, as she'd done every time so far he used a word like cute, sweet, or adorable to describe her. He was about to ask his next question when they were interrupted by an exclamation of, "Fuck's sake, dude!" Lewis and Amir had taken over the common room couch to play a game of some kind. Superman and Green Arrow were beating the crap out of each other on the screen, with the surprising result that Green Arrow seemed to be winning, much to Amir's dismay. That hadn't been the cause of the outburst, though. The cause of the outburst had been Zane, wandering right across the screen and interrupting Lewis's line of sight long enough for Amir to activate his special move and punch Green Arrow into orbit. Zane just made an unconvincing noise that sounded like, in somebody who cared, it might have been an apology, and vanished in the direction of the galley. "Fuck, that guy's really starting to bug me," Lewis complained. "I hear ya," Julian said. "Guy hasn't said 5 words to me since he came aboard." "You're not missing much," Amir told them. "Every time he talks to me, he's checking up on whether our ETA has miraculously changed. It's the only thing he'll talk about is finding this Shul person." "Zhu," Allison corrected him. "And yeah, that worries me. You said they only spent, a week on the same station, Lewis." 8 days, Turtle, Lewis said, selecting Wonder Woman for their rematch. "She was there, he arrived, she left. He's all like, shoo this, shoo that, dude's obsessed." "That sounds like trouble," Allison said. "Yeah, but what are we going to do, let the trail go cold?" Julian asked. "We owe it to her to find her and bring her home. If that means we have to deal with whatever happened between her and Zane." Allison fidgeted with her hands a bit. "I guess." He lowered his voice to speak privately with her, as the guys started their rematch. "What?" "Just, there are some kinds of trouble that guys will never get into, Julian. They only ever cause it." He frowned. "You think—" "I pray to God not," she interrupted. "Can we drop it? It's a subject I don't like talking about." He hesitated, then gave her a little squeeze, watching the game. "Favorite superhero?" "Iron Man, I guess. I don't know, I never really got into comic books, but I like the movies. Hey, you didn't tell me yours."